And so I go up here.
Hi, how are you?
Well, she was.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the COS's Presidential Forum. I'm glad you're all here. We've got 4 candidates here for you to hear today. Just to give you a little format about what we're going to be doing. Number 1, there are comment sheets on each side and out in front of the theater. Please fill those out, because that is your feedback to the board who will be meeting tomorrow to interview these 4 candidates. So please fill them out. You can either leave them here or get them to Human Resources, to Mr. Bratcher, his office, by 4:45 today, and then we will pass them on directly to the board for their interviews tomorrow. So today what's going to happen, we have half-an-hour segments for each of the candidates. They will come out, they will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. And then we have 20 minutes and 4 sets of questions. These questions were developed by all constituencies across the campus, including the community. And so the hiring committee then looked at these questions. Some we added some together and converted, and so there's 4 great questions that they just got about. They each have about 20 to 30 minutes to look at these questions before they come on, so they have not seen them before until they got here today. And after the 20 minutes is up, then they will have about 5-minute closing for their half an hour. John will be keeping a time on them. He will be asking the questions, and I will be introducing them. So I'm going to go wire up our first candidate, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, first up, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stan Carasosa. The stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Dan, as Steve may have mentioned, I'm going to be reading the questions to you. However, you have about 5 minutes to give an opening statement, and when you finish, I'll go and start the questions. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share a little bit with you and to continue the conversation that I started with the interview selection panel earlier in this process. I appreciate that very much. I think by way of just an introductory statement and an opportunity to talk with you, I want to share with you a couple of things. I want to talk to you a little bit about my development in my career and the experiences that I have, and about my interest in being part of a leadership team for College of the Sequoias. I guess the elephant in the room with me as the candidate is that I don't come to you with a community college background and experience, but I do want to talk to you about the experiences that I do have, and I hope you'll be open to understanding how those experiences can translate into successful
and positive leadership at the community college level. Obviously, I started out as a teacher and an instructor, science teacher by trade. Had the opportunity to work at administrative level in the K-12 system, really at every chair. So I've been a high school assistant principal, a high school principal. I've been an assistant superintendent, and then I've been superintendent of a smaller school district, Dinuba Unified School District, and then a larger school district, Visalia Unified School District. And I'm currently serving as superintendent for Burbank Unified School District. Each time in my career, as I've worked hard and tried to advance, it's always been motivated by an opportunity for a greater sphere of influence, the opportunity to make changes, develop systems, provide opportunities for people that could wrap around providing great services for the organization and for kids. So as a classroom teacher, I knew I impacted my 160 or 180 kids on my caseload. As an assistant principal, I was able to expand that a little bit further. As a principal, I could touch the thousands of kids that were in high school. And as an assistant superintendent and superintendent, you can actually touch the thousands and thousands of students and people in the entire school community. So that's kind of been my motivation. I think because I've had the experience of being here in the Valley, I'm a native Dinuban and an opportunity to know the Valley very well. That's something that I hope is of interest and significance to this process. I think the Valley is a pretty unique place and one that we all love, especially those of us who have made our lives and our careers here. And so in the back of your mind, you're probably saying, well, if you love the Valley so much, why did you leave? And so I think it's fair for me to share with you a little bit of what that decision-making process was like. After 10 years with Visalia Unified School District, had assembled what I thought was probably one of the best school district teams in the state there. Wasn't looking for the opportunity to go, but got a call, got a request to consider a different experience. Thought about that a little bit. At that time in my career, I looked at where my children were. The daughter and son, both in college, both in the Los Angeles area, both working in the performing arts, both wanting to excel in the performing arts and looking like they were probably going to plant roots in Southern California. So with this opportunity to be part of a different kind of district, an urban district, in a more corporate environment, and in a more entertainment-based sector, I thought it might be a very interesting opportunity for us, for my wife and I, and a chance to be a little bit closer to our kids while they were still in their early 20s and wanted to hang out with mom and dad for a little bit. And so that's the decision that we made. I had probably hoped and thought long and hard about staying in that assignment and maybe even retiring there, but always upon retirement, wanting to come back to the Valley. This is where our family is. I'm married by high school sweetheart from Dinuba. She's one of 9 children. I have 67 nieces and nephews, of which I cooked for yesterday at Mother's Day. And so we knew that our retirement would be back there. So this opportunity, I couldn't control the timing of. It's the kind of opportunity that I thought I would always be interested in, a chance to serve at the community college level, a chance to build connections between the K-12 and the community college system, and then learn what we need to learn in order to do that effectively as we transition our kids into the workforce and into the university system. The experiences I've had in leadership include boardsmanship, working with boards of directors, great boards of directors, many elections, many transitions, many opportunities to work with experienced board members, many opportunities to help build capacity with board members. I've worked extensively with budget and budget development at the organizational level. Dinuba Unified was about a $35 million budget. Visalia Unified was a $225 million budget. Burbank Unified is about a $125 million budget. So I know that the nomenclature is different. I know that the guidelines are a little different, and some of the formulas are a little different. But I've proven myself as a person who can be pretty fiscally strong and conservative, but participatory in how we make those budget decisions. And then finally, I think in the role as superintendent, I've worked with planning for and implementing collective bargaining agreements, working with employee associations, working on staff development, collaboration, shared governance, and actually putting structures in place in the K-12 system that look a lot like what we do very effectively in the community college system in terms of participatory management and shared decision making. So while my experiences might not line up perfectly at the community college level, I think there's a lot there that I hope to share with you about what I've done and how it can become applicable as a leader at the community college level.
Thank you. It is no secret California is in dire straits. It is also no secret that the community colleges in California have far more and much different challenges than the K-12 and university systems. Please identify 5 or more primary differences, challenges, and explain how your educational and work experience has prepared you to take on the challenges that are unique to a California community college.
Okay. Yeah, I got a chance to look at this one. This is one of those 11 questions all in one.
I did right, my fault.
It's okay if I get a little bit more. Everybody's seen the suit already, right? All right, they would like to get a little more comfortable. It's hot under the lights. I think the key, as I think about the key differences, for me, I shared a little bit of this a moment ago. The organizational structure is different. It's different than K-12, and it's actually different than the university system. I think the board governance structure is different. I think we deal with a shorter time frame, the 2-year span. Ideally, the design for the 2-year span is unique, the community college level setting. We serve a little bit as a connector. We have a role and a purpose. Primarily, I think we were founded right on the opportunity to be able to build academic transitions and successful progression to the university and workforce development, certifications, preparation, etc. Funding is different. The funding model is a little bit different than the continuum on either side of us. And then the actual kind of structure for decision making and the shared governance model. So when I think about those areas, and then I think about the experiences that I have in being able to help serve, here's some of the things, again, that I want to share with you in a little bit more detail. As the superintendent of Dinuba Unified School District, when I got there, it wasn't a unified school district. It was actually 2 school districts. It was a little bit like what we know in the Valley, a Woodlake, an Exeter, previously Porterville, Dinuba. We had an elementary district and we had a high school district. And they were separate independent entities, their own finance systems, their own structures, their own bylaws, their own organizations, governed by a common administration. So I learned a lot about boardsmanship. I learned a lot about how to work with boards, how to work with an elementary board, a high school board, and then collectively a joint board. So for me, it was an opportunity to develop those skills in terms of how board members come into the process, the role that they play, the governance structures that they provide us, and the decision making that they make that then we get the opportunity to try to transition and to implement. So I use that as one example of how, because the board structure at the community college level is a little different than both of those, I'm hoping that you're going to be interested in a candidate who has some boardsmanship experience and some boardsmanship abilities. Those are the kinds of things you get when you're a sitting superintendent. Again, budget development and the challenge of the budget at the community college level. I think right now we're probably in the most difficult times that we've been in for a long time. Difficult times. And COS, while it has a long-standing fabulous reputation, it has challenges right now as well, some of them that we've just mentioned. So I have the kinds of experiences very comparable to the challenges that we face, and would love the opportunity to serve and try to put some positive solutions in place.
Thank you. Given the backdrop of severe budget reductions, diverse student body, low student retention rates, demand for courses, and a high proportion of students who come to us underprepared for college, if you were selected as the next president of COS, how would you propose the college respond to the demands placed upon it?
Well, that's one of those questions, John, where there's like a lot of stuff packed in there. So, I guess if I had to think about those in some sort of priority order, you rattled off the budget reductions, the diverse student body, low retention rates, demand for courses, high proportion of students who come to us unprepared. That talks to the systemic complexity of the community college system. And again, what I go to is I go to the experience that I have in taking a look at all of that and being able to pull it apart a little bit, analyze how it works together, start to put it back together in a sequential fashion that hopefully maximizes the ability for it to interact and become something positive and effective at the end. That sounded pretty hypothetical or maybe even a little academic, so let me give you a couple of practical examples. I would start with the budget. I'd start with the concern we have right now. I think until we get the money in order, everybody's got anxiety. And unfortunately, we don't like to say this, but the budget drives so many things. And so whatever the landscape is right now in the college community about the budget and the finance, I think we need to take a look at that. I think we need to understand what the budget realities are. If there's a lack of trust in the information, we need to build that trust. If there's a lack of transparency in the figures and the dollars and the money that's out there, we need to be transparent. We need to show that information. If there's some education that needs to happen among the college community or the community at large, we need to take an active role in helping that education to take place. But our story needs to be clear. It needs to be honest and it needs to be factual. And then I think we can start to figure out, once we've all decided we can agree on what the key issues are and the key challenges are, we can start to figure out some solutions. But until we get the budget ideas solved, we're going to have that underlying anxiety that's going to make it really difficult. Either purposefully or unintentionally, it's going to make it really difficult to get to the other issues. I think the other issues are incredibly important, though, and I guess I'm the kind of leader that you should know that while I'm willing to work on the budget and work on the collective bargaining and negotiable aspects of it, we can't stop the whole organization while that's going on. So we do need to stay focused on the primary mission. We do need to take a look at the issues that are driving the lower retention rates. We do need to take a look at the issues of diversity of our students and continue to work on them. We've got systems in place to do that. I'd love the opportunity to analyze those. I'd be the first one to tell you that I couldn't come in and turn that all upside down. I think I'd come in first and learn it, study it, see what we do, and then try to bring my experiences to bear to improve that and to make it better. So there's a lot of moving parts. They all require some work simultaneously. That's what I've spent the last 19 years doing as a superintendent in multifaceted district structures, is juggling all of that information and all of those moving parts simultaneously, continually realigning them in ways that they can be stronger, better, and more effective. Maximizing resources, achieving the goals of the achievement of the organization's primary purpose, and building good relationships, positive relationships. You don't go to a leadership position in a district like Visalia Unified School District and stay there for 10 years and 3 budget cycles and several rounds of negotiations and going to impasse and going to mediation and going to fact-finding and make it through that and stay and find a successful solution and then afterwards have a good, positive outcome and build new structure. You don't do all that without having some ability to be able to bring people together and work through those processes. So again, for me, it's about relationships, honesty, respect. There's a set of core values that you'll always be able to count on from me in managing these complex issues. The technical stuff, we have a ton of really bright people around us, and I think we would want to use all of them. But what you need to count on from the person who's your president, your superintendent, is that they're going to be honest, and there's going to be a set of core values that are going to drive their work, and that's going to be consistent, it's going to be fair, it's going to be open, and we don't always agree. We can agree to disagree, but we're never going to be mean, we're never going to mistreat or hurt each other. And that's a little bit how I like to operate. When I see a multifaceted question like this that has so much to it, I kind of start to step back and say it's really about the processes we put in place to try to work together.
Thank you. You have about 13 minutes left. Question number 3. Explain your understanding of the recently adopted Student Success Task Force recommendations. Describe how you would implement these recommendations here at COS in order to improve student success, and describe the opportunities and challenges this will present.
I've spent some time with the Student Success Task Force report and recommendations. It's one of the things I guess that I would ask you to think about is, having been a leader in the K-12 system for the last 2 decades, we've had a number of mandated legislative reforms. We've lived and are living with the Public School Accountability Act of 1998, the No Child Left Behind Act of 2002, the Race to the Top of 2008. So we've had the state and federal mandated legislative change. We've had to kind of dig in and reinvent ourselves. One of the things I've learned in that process is that it isn't all great just because someone else studied it and told us this is the stuff you should do. But there are some things in there. I think we should have an open mind to what's in there. I think we should look at what we're currently doing and try to match up with those pieces of that task force report that could be effective and successful and help us. There's 8 recommendations in there. You all probably know them better than I do, but it would be increasing the career college readiness, strengthening support for our entering students, incentivize successful student behaviors, align the course offerings to meet student needs, improve education and basic skills, revitalize and re-envision staff development, enable efficiency statewide with leadership to increase the coordination among the colleges, and then in the end, align the resources. So some of it's going to take place at a legislative level, which would allow me to use all the contacts and connections I have established at both county, state, and national level. Some of it's going to happen here with us. Some of it's going to be through the shared governance model, reinvented a little bit, and reconnected in ways that could be positive for colleges of Sequoias. The other thing we have working for us is we do have the 5-year strategic plan that this college has already done. There's a number of things that COS really does very well, already aligned with this task force. So there's a bunch of work that's been laid in place for us to be successful. My approach would be think big, but start small. Look at the things that we know we need to do, try to make them work effectively, measure them a little bit at a time, make changes as they're appropriate, and make changes as they bring the results that we want. Don't rush in. Don't try to turn everything upside down. Don't take a report and implement it wholesale. We're a moving, living, breathing organization. Probably wouldn't be a successful strategy to try to do that.
Thank you. Last question. Give us 2 more examples of your use of innovative budgeting, in good times and in bad, and tell us both the effects on the college and the general financial strategies or approaches to be drawn from your experiences.
Yes, you gave me this question and I looked at the word innovative. I thought anything right now that makes the budget work and balance is innovative. Because the budget struggle we really are in is pretty much a survival mode. So we're kind of creating, I use the metaphor of we're fixing the airport as it's leaving the runway. The airplane as it's leaving the runway. We're down there with our tools, but this thing's already in motion and we have to make some adjustments on the fly and make it work. As I think of a district experience I had that was one where we had to struggle and we were in what we define here as bad times. I think about the financial state of Dinuba Unified School District when I arrived there. I told you it was 2 separate districts. The budget in the high school district was bankrupt. The budget in the elementary district was flush. They were separate. They didn't want to share the money. So the boardsmanship that came into place with me there was to talk about how we could combine those 2 districts. It actually was a fairly complicated process. We had to go through a piece of legislation. We had to hold a community election. And we had to agree to unify those 2 school districts, which meant 2 school boards of 5 members each had to agree to half of them giving up their seats and consolidating into 1 board of 5 in an election, and eliminating their territory and becoming 1 large district. What it did for us financially, though, is it gave us that average base revenue limit. Instead of getting some money per student for high school and some money per student for elementary, we got a combined amount per student for the total unified population. It increased Dinuba Unified School District's base revenue limit, our general fund, by 10.5%, just simply by taking the blended revenue limit and multiplying it times the same number of kids. So we involved everybody. We went to our employee associations. They had a stake in it. They said, hey, our salaries aren't good. They're not comparable. Our benefits and our salaries need to be fixed. If you want our support in this, we want to know that some of this money will help us. So we dedicated 1/3 of the new money to correcting the inequities in the salary schedule. The board wanted to build a new elementary school, but we couldn't pass a bond. So we dedicated 1/3 of the new money to actually being our local match to fund a new elementary school. And then the third third of that money, we just said we need to have money on hand every year. We need things. We're we were an older, tired district. We needed technology and equipment. So we set up 1/3 of the fund for capital outlay and divided it up through a process so that everybody got to get some new things and upgrade. It was a wonderful way that we used an innovative solution to bring new money into the district that hadn't been able to be done before. The second example, real quick in good times, I guess, is when we were in the housing boom here in Visalia back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, and Visalia Unified School District was getting a chunk of developer fees rolling in every year because we got a per square foot fee on all of the schools, on all of the homes that were built in the school area. We were building up a pretty good developer fee budget. We had finished the Measure G bond, We had a lot of money here locally from the developer fees. We decided to start to parcel it out and buy property for future school sites and use it as our local match to build new elementary schools. Elementary schools are the most cost effective. They're smaller. They don't have gyms and science labs and swimming pools and stadiums. So we could tell the community that we took the developer fees and we built your neighborhood schools. We used that as our state match. And we didn't have to pass a bond. In the 10 years that I was here, we built 6 new elementary schools in 7 years. And we had one on the books when I left, and it's Shannon Ranch, and it's being built now. And we did all that without having to pass a bond because we had the foresight to buy the property, use the developer fees appropriately. And what that was doing to make all this construction happen is it was allowing us to take those cost of living adjustments that were coming into the budget when we were getting COLAs and apply those to the salary schedule and to the operational programs of the district. So we were taking care of everybody in an appropriate way, open, honest, transparent. A really good example, I think, of taking good care of the community's money and doing it effectively, and now we're actually enjoying the benefits of that. We've got all the elementary schools off year-round calendars. Everybody's on a traditional calendar. There's room for all the kids in the district, and I feel really fortunate to have been a part of that.
Thank you. You have about 5 minutes to give a closing statement.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, I think we've talked a little bit about the elephant in the room, but I hope I've had the opportunity to share a little bit with you the experiences that I can bring from the work that I've done and the education that I have and the time that I've spent in the Valley to be considered a really potentially successful leader for College of the Sequoias. I'm a Valley person. I'm not going to hide that. I think that's one of the things that I hope is attractive to you about me, is I think when the new president, superintendent comes in, whoever it is, we're all going to have a learning curve. And some of the things that a new president is going to have to learn about College of the Sequoias is probably, what's the Central Valley like? What are the cultures and traditions that are inherent here? What's our economic and educational development levels, the demographics of our area? It's part of the learning curve. What are our neighboring communities like? What's the district like? What's the university like? I think we're also going to have to know a little bit about boardsmanship and governance, because I know I could be a president of a sitting campus right now, or I could be a vice president on a campus right now. I could even be vice chancellor in a central office right now. But if I haven't been superintendent, and I haven't been in the position to plan the budget, implement the budget, to plan and implement collective bargaining agreements, and to work with and govern the elected board of education and the board of officials. So everybody's going to have a learning curve. They're going to have some things they need to learn. We also need to know the academic programs. We need to know student services. We need to know the Student Success Task Force. We need to know the inner workings of the campuses. We need to know the community college system. So I see myself, if those are the 4 or 5 biggies, as having that superintendent kind of experience that I think is really important. A track record of success in working with boards, building and managing budgets, taking care of facilities, a track record of planning and implementing collective bargaining agreements, contract negotiations. Those are the things that, unless you've been in a superintendent position, you're not going to know whether you can do those effectively or successfully. And so for me, the learning curve is going to be to get with the team on the campus and to start to understand the procedural workings and the culture of the campus of the College of the Sequoias. And I feel like that's probably the safest place to be on a learning curve, because you're surrounded by talented people in a shared governance model in which you're supposed to be relying upon their expertise anyway. So I see that as an opportunity for me to be able to facilitate and use my leadership skills as I have in the past. And I would love the opportunity to do that and to try to help us be successful. The other nuances about the Valley, I know that it's 105 degrees here in the summer. I know that we have tule fog in the winter. Personally, growing up here, those are 2 of my favorite things because it keeps half of Los Angeles and LA from wanting to move here. So I like that. I love the smell of the dairies. I was assistant principal at Hanford High School, so I know Kings County and I know Hanford, and that's one of our campus communities. Love the community, had a home there. My son was born there. And then I was principal at Corcoran High School. And that's one of our schools and one of our communities. And had a wonderful opportunity to live in Corcoran, had a home there, raised my children there before we took the superintendency in Danube. So I have the privilege of knowing people like J.G. Boswell and Donnie Gilkey and the Salyers. And so there's some things about the familiarity with the area that I think are pretty important and pretty intangible, and I hope they're very valuable to you. So I would make a commitment to you if you give me the opportunity to be here and to serve as your superintendent president, to bring everything that I know about the Valley to bear in the successes and to work with you as a team of academic and collegiate professionals to make sure that College of the Sequoias makes it through the difficult cycle we're in right now and not only survives that, but thrives in ways that can be creative and can be powerful for the important role that this institution plays in the economic and academic development of the central part of the Valley. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. I apologize in advance for being nervous. When we were walking in, they said, the ladies in the office were laughing, going, yeah, they're taking that first lamb to slaughter. And then they walked through by the green room, and I realized this is a little bit like the Green Mile coming down there. But actually, you've been a pretty nice audience, very quiet, very attentive. So I won't leave anything for the next person to be nervous about. I think it's all going very well. Would love the opportunities to serve and be a part of College of the Sequoias, and thank you for the chance to be here and share my thoughts and ideas with you today. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take about an 8-minute break. The next candidate will be taking the stage at 1:25.
Type the whole thing up.
Good idea.
All the buildings that don't need more facilities. Let me go finish.
Everything is built in. A lot of it's problematic. It's tough to break out.
Made a cookie. I don't think so.
The first part of the someone figures that out. This year's budget will take 11, 12, probably 8 tier 2.
No, he's in red specs for 2.
Well, they're using, well, that's what they
Better early than late.
One of the
Farmersville had one building they built.
Still right. It's mine.
With the not the man.
Alright, that's perfect. I could see that you had it on for a while.
Yeah, we had 41 other viewers, so I think you'll be about 5 years old. So if they're satisfied, you should be done. Yeah. COS, it's all basically students and staff. Well, we have open Wi-Fi on March. Ooh, one SBC. Another guy. They're saying, we're not sure this can be like 3 o'clock. This money is paid for. Well, I think all we can do is break the question and they will take it back. Because that's what, they go to the same time. And they say, what can you try to get away from? The state has, I've been to 3 meetings. They don't have all the regulations. We're talking about Alan. Yeah, turned out. He was from Stratford. So we were just talking about that. I said from a lot of because they're all different, but almost all went to the same place. With the county, they tried to put everything in. So his they're just putting everything in it, not near me. They're building their own form. So it's all
It won't be sure, I'll interrupt.
And then it's gonna be
well, see, they're on and but you don't have to, and you lost. And so, if I was sitting there, I would have lived there. You want to take it away, it's your responsibility.
Okay.
And,
Do you want to climb over? Hop over, Darcy. That would be very cool.
There's
I got one.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the train. There's a train right now at the station. The train is powered by 4 different engines. At the very front of that train, there's an engine called the Student Success Task Force. And from that came a whole series of recommendations. Then following that train, we have a thing called the Little Hoover Commission Report, which is very similar, but is very critical to the legislature, which is really kind of fun.
Right now, we're looking at 8% cut in education in the budget, unless we pass the tax. But you never saw any mention about the prisons being cut, did you? The funding for that. But private prisoners don't vote. So so part of that's the idea behind the governor's budget. At the back of the train are two much more powerful engines. One of them is called the legislature. Right now, there's an engineer, and there's two bills going right through the legislature right now. One of them is being powered in the aspect of trying to implement part of the distance assessment initiative. What also is behind that is an even more powerful issue called accreditation. Now, I have to tell you, the train is leaving the station. There is an old Southern statement, and I'm not Southern at all, but let me try to imitate the drawl of a good friend of mine named Sam. He says, the dog barks, but the train moves on. It took me 3 days to figure out what he meant. With that being said, we have been barking in the legislature. We have talked, we have sat there, we've discussed it, but regardless, change is coming. With change, let me tell you how it works. This is a time that we, as institutions in California, community colleges, we need to have people at the helm of our colleges that have experience. Not just experience, but experience that is critical in this time right now. When we look at the finances, I have to, this is basically an interview with a large group. Let me tell you a couple things that I know. I've been CBO of 2 different institutions, and I've worked with the numbers, but my strength is people. This is the time you need to build. Whenever you're being threatened on the outside, you need to look at who you are and try to focus in as to where you're going. So with that being said, that's kind of my background. I'm a people person. I enjoy people. Believe it or not, I was a CBO. The thing that is about me is I'm very good at numbers. I'm a financial analyst by trade. But the reality is 2 + 2 always equals 4, or it's supposed to. Depends how much you juggle the books. Anyway, but that being said, I like people. So I've done both sides of the house. I'm really a people person that does numbers really well. So that's kind of who I am, where I'm coming from. I like to go through, I have this natural knack. Whenever there's a problem, I shouldn't ask you this question, but let me answer the question anyway. Have you ever done Myers-Briggs or strength tests? Did you ever do those tests? Okay. With that, one of my strengths is I'm strategic. My very number one is strategic. Whenever there's a problem, I tend to solve it in the 3-year window. How will it look 3 years from now? So that's kind of my orientation. So I tend to find a path to difficult situations, bring people along, and try to solve it together. So with that, I think I have 4 questions.
Yes, you do. The first question. It is no secret California is in dire straits. It is also no secret that the community colleges in California have far more and much different challenges than the K-12 and university systems. Please identify 5 or more primary differences and challenges and explain how your educational and work experience has prepared you to take on the challenges that are unique to a California community college.
Thanks, John. Can I get 6?
5 or more.
All right. Well, I've been a CBO twice. In one case, I had to consolidate 3 major programs at a multi-college district back in the Midwest, and in the process, I had to really try to get people to work together because people get very frustrated when you consolidate things. So I've gone through that experience, and also I've been involved quite a bit in workforce development, actually helping create jobs. Actually, one meeting I had a board member decided to single me out, and because they have this knack for organizing, and I was given a thing called the Open Builders Association, where we went through and we actually established a whole coordinated program with that, bringing 5 different unions together, and we actually had set up a whole system of actually working with our instructors and the unions trying to achieve journeyman status. So that's kind of the background I have. I've been chief negotiator many times. Now that being said, don't get excited. I'm a nice one. So I, if you went through, and feel free to check my references, because by golly, you already have. Just about everybody I know has been called. If you go back and talk to the union president for Faculty Association, Louis Wong, he would probably tell you that I'm relatively tough, fair, and believe it or not, I know this is hard to believe, there are times we have lapped in negotiations. So I think you can go through, understand that you have one vision, one purpose, and you need to understand also who I am. I'm a community college graduate. I have 4 different degrees, and of the 4 different degrees, I can go back and count dozens of faculty, dozens of instructors. The 2 finest professors I ever had were at community college, Tom Cook and Rob Avery. Truth be told, those two people gave me skill sets that I use every single day today. Now, that being said, you need to understand where I'm coming from. I believe what we do changes lives. If to be honest, I was in the private sector, I was rather good at it. I like this, because here I get to do something, and I can make a profit in the private sector, but here people walk in the front door, they pay us money, they go through and they say, please do something for me, help me, make me smarter, help me improve my resume, give me skills, and we do that. Now, all that being said, the most important thing we do here is that faculty-student relationship. There's nothing that is more important than that. If I'm your superintendent president, you need to know who I'll be. I am the support staff member. Now, it doesn't mean, just so you know, it doesn't mean you get away with everything. Okay, because I do have a role administratively, but I am there to make certain that faculty-student relationship is strong, and that will be the focus of this college if I'm your superintendent president. Now, that means everybody, including the president, including vice presidents, including deans, are here to support that relationship. Now, when it comes down to dealing with tough times, it's here. And here is the reality of the finances here. In California, we have this 3-year wave. Every 3 years, we have budget crawls up, and then we have a cut. And then we come up again. It averages about 3% annually. This budget cut's huge. We're looking at overall 21 up to 32%, depending on the college district, as to how bad the cuts are. It's going to take us 7 to 10 years. I have to tell you, this is the time that you need somebody with experience in the finances and of the house, consider how to structure things, how to build things. So with that, I have that experience, but let me go through, let me give the other qualifications I have. As chief negotiator, I bring people together, even when we don't agree on everything. To me, that's a big deal. I'm also in accountability. Recently in accreditation we went through, we got dinged by the accreditation team and placed on warning. We were out of warning status in 9 months. If you understand accreditation, that is a big deal. One thing that we did is, working with district services, we were not communicating to the colleges. We developed something that frankly is a model, we call it the transparent follow-through committee model. Believe it or not, we hold committees accountable. Isn't that rare? You ever been in a committee and make a decision here and you see the same question or decision come back 2 years later in a different committee? We found a way to do that. We do it by holding people accountable in the minutes. We put down who's going to do what. I think accountability is a big deal. I think also it's a big deal that you hold your superintendent president accountable too. If I tell you I'm going to do something, then I have an obligation to do what I told you I'm going to do. Now, a lot of times you don't have that. I do. If I told you, well, we're going to do this, and by the way, sometimes with this current budget system, you can't do what you want to do. That means you have to go back to that person and say, you know what, I tried to do it, here's what happened, and you explain to the person what happened, and then you go on. But the truth is, when I give you my word, I'm a big deal, that's why I'm very good at negotiations. People trust me. The trust isn't because I have this natural aura. The trust is based upon experience. I like following through things. It's a big deal. The next thing is, how can I say this? I tend to wire myself. You know how I like people? I talk to people. I go out and I'm part of the Commission for Legislative Action in the state of California, which is part of ACA, which is the Association of California Community Colleges. I have a whole series of different organizations part of. I have access, a personal friend of mine just got appointed to the Education Committee in the Assembly. I won't mention his name because him and I don't always agree on several things. But anyway, but with that, I know a lot of people. I mentioned to the first round interview committee, I was at a dinner one time recently, and I knocked the glass of wine from the state chancellor's office out of his hand and shattered it on the floor. And then I got to dinner with him. And the next day he retired. I swear it is not the wine. But anyway, so that being said, I think part of my job is to represent you. So that means going out there, that means meeting people, that means making certain that College Sequoias has the best possible. You ever see those little wind-up mice? You wind them up and you let them go on the floor and they have a nose that bumps against the wall and they back up and you try a different way. I tend to do that. If I can't get through this pathway, I'll try to find a different pathway. Part of that is knowing who to turn to and how to go about doing that. So with that, the sixth one is, there's a book just published I'm not selling the book, but I did not write the book on change. I did write the chapter on change, though. There's a book that came out in January called Strategic Management in Higher Education, and I wrote the chapter on how to create change in organizations. And by that, I presented something like that at the Community College in California. It's called How to Create Change in Look at Colorado. So a lot of times you can create change, but the problem is people react against it so strongly that the person that created it is gone within a couple of years. My game plan is to make certain we have change that's sustainable, that we can actually work together long-term, because then it's a shared visions. So, and there'll be a lot more about that. So if we have change, number one, you'll hear about it, you'll hear why, and I will do all I can to get you on board that change. So that's what.
Thank you. We have about 18 minutes left. Question number 2. Given the backdrop of severe budget reductions, a diverse student body, low student retention rates, demand for courses, and a high proportion of students who come to us underprepared for college, if you were selected as the next president of COS, how would you propose the college respond to the demands placed upon it?
Remember what I said, the number one thing that we do is the student-faculty relationship? That's critical. When you look at change, when you look at what do you have to protect your most sacred heart of what you do, and that's what that is. You need to look at, first of all, I would take an extensive look at the fiscal and see if we can go through and make any changes there. Part of the things that I do, I'm a finance person and not an accountant. There's actually a difference between the two. I tend to leverage things, to move things around. That's part of what I do to make things happen financially that way. That being said, when you go through and you look, we need to look at the Student Success Task Force. There's a total of 21 recommendations on it. One of the most powerful, compelling one that we have to pay attention to, and if you haven't read it, you need to go back and read it. And I'm serious because this is going to affect us a lot. One of the most powerful ones is that student demand will be driving our schedules. Now, you need to listen to that because that's a change in how we do business. Right now, we're funded by FDS. We're going to be funded by student success. That is really different. So the reality is that if you look at the retention rate that you have, did you know that 92% of your courses are actually have a higher retention rate than the state average? I just thought I would share that. Did you know that 90% of your distance education retention is higher than the state average? And by the way, the distance education, I don't know what you guys are doing, you're not just a little bit higher, you're much higher. So the truth of the matter is, some of you faculty here are superb. I just thought I'd share that. Although we're talking about we are one thing, right? I saw it. Anyway, so that being said, I understand as an administrator, I take a different stand. But the truth is, some of you faculty are superb. You know your business. The success is there. And yes, the retention rate on the state average is just mediocre. The truth of the matter is, your retention rate is actually higher than the state average. When you go through and look at that, we also need to go back and tweak some of our certificates, some of the different degrees. There are not enough students graduating with those programs. The Student Success Task Force has 4 different components to it. One of them is centralization of the Chancellor's Office. Another one comes on automation. And then 2 of them really come down to actually just standardization of practices. And if you look at that, a huge amount of that is going to be how we go through from beginning to end and look in the process as to how we do business. When you come through and you look at the BSI students that come in, I hate to tell you this, it's been over 10 years. When I did my PhD, I interviewed the founder of the University of Phoenix, and I asked him this question. I says, all right, let me ask you this. What do you do with the student not prepared for college? Now, to be honest, I have a strong opinion about his personality that I can't share publicly. He says, we don't, it's your problem. Well, I hate to tell you, it is. What happens is you get these schools that charge $400, $450 per hour tuition, okay, and they're not going to deal with the unprepared student. That's our job. So we have to deal with it. So how do we deal with it? Part of the Student Success Task Force talks about the idea of making certain that students are not prepared. They need to go through the process and mandatory orientation, and that's too bad if they don't like it. They have to do that. And by the way, you remember about that dog that's barking? The train's moving. And it doesn't matter if we're going to argue and fight over that issue. The truth of the matter is that'll be part of the bills coming through the package. So we have that to deal with. When it comes down to deal with the different issues that we have, how do we go about doing that? We're going to have to look at, if you look at the stats, Summer school has a higher retention and success rate than the fall and spring. Now, that being said, there is no summer school. So how do you go through and implement summer school? There's a formula, and the formula works that if you throttle back in one area, you can pick up another area. But the problem is that means throttling back spring and summer unless you find some alternative funding where you decide to fund courses without any additional state funding. That means you look at the efficiency. You look at the number of students per classroom, and you check that out. Then you have other issues to deal with on top of that. So that's part of it too. We need to look at the declared programs of study. Part of the standardization they're talking about from the Chancellor's office is by the third semester they're enrolled that students have to have a program of study defined. A lot of them don't. And by the way, our success rate on a statewide basis, we're graduating about 32% of our students. If you walked into Best Buy and 32% of products don't work, you look at it, you're very critical. One of the things that we do is we focus so much on FTS, we don't look at the outcome by number 10. So with that being said, yeah.
Thank you. Number 3. Explain your understanding of the recently adopted Student Success Task Force recommendations. Describe how you would implement those recommendations here at COS in order to improve student success, and describe the opportunities and challenges this will present.
If you look at the task force, there's 21 recommendations. 5 of them deal with technology. One of them is a database warehouse, and the recommendation, really, you got to read the technical parts of it. It really talks about having a longitudinal analysis of K through 18. Really boring stuff. But the truth of the matter is, our student database, we don't articulate across the entire state. So we don't know who we're dealing with. When you have a large agricultural community, we have a large number of students of migrant workers that come through. The K-12 have to wrestle with this. If you work in K-12, you understand the challenges they face with that. But the truth of the matter is that also drives the BSI students as they come through the BSI means Basic Skills Initiative students when they come through the system. With that being said, we need to have a couple mandatory things. I mentioned one already about the mandatory orientation for students not prepared for college. We need to, there is a bill going through right now in the legislature. It's talking about Board of Governors waivers. I kind of know the Board of Governors waivers. When it comes to the end, you said over here that if the student doesn't have 2 successful semesters, is what Jack Scott's saying, is that the interpretation of the bill that's coming through from Lowenthal is that they will lose their BOG waivers. What does that mean? That means that some of our students not prepared for classes, they will lose their funding. And that'll change how we do business. So that being said, we also need to look at, let me talk about something about faculty, and I'm going to come back to this in just a second. We need to look at what some people call boutique programs. Now, by boutique programs, that means courses that somebody loves to teach, but the class can be non-transferable. Whether we like it or not, we're going to be looking at a couple things. The non-transferability issue and repeatability. Now, this is not new. Repeatability has been around for a long time. By repeatability is we may end up having a cap that goes through and says no more arts, no more PE classes, and I have to tell you, that's a disappointment. I'm a swimmer. I like to swim when I can, a mile a day. I know I'm an overachiever. 72 laps there and back, but you get to think in the meantime while you're perspirating and trying to get your next breath of air. I've taken some of those courses numerous times. That would end. Okay. We're not here for the person that's taking the class 10 times in a row. If you ever look at art, okay, the truth is some of the classes that teach sculpture, especially metal sculpture, where they create a wax mold and so on, they go through the process, it almost takes 4 years to get the hang of that. Those courses may not be available for students because I had one student sit there at one of the hearings and they talked about the fact that she was 17 years old, she was totally rude, inappropriate, but let me share with what she said because it's totally on record. She was the last speaker out of about 17 people. In that meeting, I had senior citizens come forward, a large group that we have in our district. They had a petitions of 4,000 signatures saying, we want to make sure our emeritus program survives and everything else. I love it because part of our mission, if you read in the Ed Code, is taking care of that group, right? This is yes? Okay. So now that being said, the student stood up and she was She identified herself as 17. She'd been going to school since she was 16 at her community college. She says, I can only take 2 out of the 4 courses I need for my certificate because the courses are so full because I have so many people doing additional courses. It would be nice, by the way, I qualified it so she's rude and inappropriate, right? She says, some of you people have had your shot at life. You need to move, turn on, and let me have a shot at it too. Stop registering for the courses I need to graduate. Now, rude, inappropriate, but is that her truth? That's where she's living. I hate to tell you that we have to look at that issue. I know part of our mission is servicing the entire community because we're a comprehensive system, right? Now, when I say right, this is yes, and this is no. So our job is to be comprehensive and serve everybody, right? Okay. And now that being said, how do you deal with that? One person, West Hills, Galindo, they initiated priority registration, and the seniors, not senior citizens, but seniors from high schools were #1 priority. Is that a population to serve? Can you do things to service that issue? The answer is yes, you can. And I know that I'm probably talking too long, so with that time. Yes.
You have 8 minutes left, so you're doing okay with time.
All right.
Final question. Give us 2 or more examples of your use of innovative budgeting in good times and in bad, and tell us both the effects on the college and the general financial strategies or approaches to be drawn from your experiences.
I look through my current college. I had the situation where remember I talked about restructuring and eliminating some jobs? I did that. I'm Vice Chancellor of Human Resources, and I love that job. We had the Vice Chancellor been the services lead, so for a year I got to do both jobs. And that was wonderful. What a great experience to do 2 jobs. Anyway, by the way, we may have to do that here as well. But the truth of the matter, when it comes down to, if you're looking at that, I had to shift some money. Now, I know that the scope is different here, but I shifted funds, $37 million of them, from being held in one account because some accountant deemed we have to hold it in this reserve. I changed the reserve. It was perfectly fine, legal. I didn't do anything improper. I shifted them so we can actually spend it into the general operations. We need to go through and look at every single penny, every single dime, and see where it is. And to be honest, I have the expertise to do that. I'm very cautious doing that because I'm not a micromanager, but I do know the details. That is probably the biggest strength I have is I will go through and look at all the details in the process because if we're talking about eliminating jobs, eliminating people, that's a big deal to me. So I will look and I'll scrape the pennies first before that happens. So with that, there's also something else called new market tax credits. I doubt if you've ever heard of them. It's a very technical financial tool. It can apply to 7 different criteria by the federal government. Actually, you have a center that actually is qualified for those funds, and that could be leveraged in that process there. To the tune, I actually was working on a project that would bring in $24 million to the college I'm in right now. And the one site is eligible. Consolidate workforce development. You have to look at what I call review, restructure, and leverage. When it comes down to financial times, you need to look at your administration, see how you're structured. If you can consolidate, if you can shift, sometimes you have to look at the dean's duties. Where they're working right now, can they do more? Can you get by without filling a position? That's what you look at. You also have to look at classified service, what that's doing, making certain that you have no areas that are indispensable. Now, I need to tell you, when it comes down to people, I don't think any administrator should ever sit down and lay somebody off until they fight every bit, every process. They look them in the eye and say, I'm sorry. They have to be able to do that and say, I've done everything I can. That's a big deal. So if we're talking about reducing all the way to jobs, we have to look at that. In a college this size, if you're talking $2 million, you're talking a job somewhere, at least one. When that happens, the administrator that sits or writes a memo and says, you're laid off, and puts it in the mailbox, frankly, would never work for me. Okay, I'm not into that. If you can't look them in the eye and say, I've done everything I can to save your job, then shame on you, as far as I'm concerned. That's part of the process of being a human. So with that part, I think you have to look at that. When administration, you get classified, look at adjuncts, I do think we need to focus in the summer semester. The whole idea of a higher retention rate and higher success rate summer, we have to address that issue somewhere in the process. So, with that,
Thank you. That concludes the questions, but you have about 5 minutes to give a closing statement.
You know, if you look, and I have, do you realize that you guys are the jewel in San Joaquin Valley? I mean, seriously. I went through, and I don't mean to tell you, I checked things out. I shouldn't say harassed, but I talked to wait staff, I talked to people in the stores. People love the community here. I've talked to people over, my wife and I came in yesterday, we went down to Sequoia's National Park. I asked the waiter, what do you think of the college? It's a pretty good one. A lot of friends, and he went on and on for a little bit, because he was a former graduate from this college. When I looked at the data, you have some fabulous things happening here. You have financial difficulties, but so does everybody else. Your difficulties are actually not as bad as some other colleges. You don't have the massive layoffs that a couple districts are going through. But I went through, and people are very proud of Visalia. You have a board of trustees, and I would say this if they weren't here, but they are, so I'm going to say it in front of them instead of behind their back. Your board is very wired to the community. They know the community pulse, and let me give you the evidence of that. You passed 3 bond issues in the last 10 years, and I will tell you that unless the district, the people that live here, unless they trusted your board, trusted you as employees of this district, unless they trusted, that wouldn't happen. So you have clear documented evidence of a board that is totally connected to the community and actually speaks on their behalf. You, in the minds of the community, have done a fabulous job. They wouldn't pass those 3 bond issues unless you, as the employees of this district, were doing a board job. But you're obviously doing a good one, and I can show you data that shows that. When it comes down to who do you want to become, in the time of change, we need to look at different issues. We need to look at how do we cope with the change. Can we bring in technology through some additional funding that might be available to new market tax credits or fundraising, and that part of it, to actually go through and keep jobs and actually beat ourselves up in the aspect of providing service to students? The answer is yes, you can. So even when times are tough, do you have what it takes to get through and not only come out at the other end successful, at the other end maybe 5 to 7 years from now? Do you have what it takes to be one of the premier colleges? Now, you'll never be as big as Los Angeles. If that was your aspiration, I'm sorry, you're not going to do it, and I hate to be the first to tell you that. Okay, but the truth is, can you be one of the finest institutions in California? All the ingredients are here. You got a board. You really have the facilities is really well done. If you haven't seen the new Tulare Center, you need to go take a look. It's spectacular. It's beautiful. When it opens, it'll be wonderful for the faculty. You have the ingredients right here. You have the community connectivity, not from your board, but also your city councils. They really support the college really well. You need to have somebody also that can guide you through the process of the finances. I have that experience, but on top of that, I have the people skills. I have the K-12 experience. I was a former principal of the K-12 system. I love that. That's where I found my first love to be education. And I have that experience, but the reality that is really different from community college. And I know both of them, you need to have that connection, but also the connection all the way through to Cal State and UC. You need to have that to get through the next few years, and I think I have those connections. After studying you guys, I think you're fabulous. You have a lot of positive things going for you, and I think I have that skill set, that human connection that you need to have because you're superintendent president. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. You take care.
We're going to take about a 10-minute break. Your next candidate will take the stage at 2:05.
Got a lot of reading to catch up on. Chiquitos. What? You haven't done your reading yet? I read a little bit in the morning before I went to class. Had to get it done, you know? And it's right around the corner. Give up? Yeah? Farm move.
So you're not ready to shoot?
We gotta be there Kuya or next to us all the time.
I'll send you the stuff. You saw the email pictures?
I wish I could say something.
Oh, you know what? I'll send you an email. Okay, hey, about that, that class, she took it as in high school as a British class. So if what she needed to have done,
This guy that we work with, real no nonsense, he'll just tell you how it is. We're learning
Shay, no,
on the backside of my house faces south.
she had to register her as
We don't have a lot of shade out there, so I mean, in that sense,
because it's not an articulated class. It's not one that we have an articulation for. But I'm really with this one. It sounded familiar, and it was a bridge class. So she technically.
and that's really what this was designed for. We just happen to be at the same time, start out of drive, so that all the ladies, Tim came home the other day, Peter was running,
She did take it in the house and some credit. Credit at the high school.
so turn the lights off, and Peter started. So just that, I think he said 7 lights.
Western Auxiliary Union High School. She's an ad, basic ad teacher. Which is what this class was. And Shay was
I'll send you the stuff, you can talk to him, charge you, or Joe and
so
Francie.
she would
I'll
have
see
had
Joe, I should see Joe tomorrow, I
That's
see Joe on Tuesdays. But you know what I mean?
right, yeah, that's the teacher. I did, because I called Shay and I asked her if she would come in. She said, oh, I'm really not taking this class. She goes, but I don't know if she ever could you go to the here?
Yeah, but I talked to you, and then you were gonna try to go back to college.
That's where the problem lies. I left a message, and Okay, I just want her to. So I'll let her know what I do. Okay, thanks, Adrian. Bye. Take care.
Yeah, she did, but I got gotta get it fixed.
Yeah, good. Very important. Everyone's trying to tie in like localization because there's only some version of
I got the notice that that's starting.
Foundation is a good
I have nothing. If they keep turning the soil,
Okay, that's all. I sent you that email. Okay, bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Kevin Crutton.
Good afternoon. See, this is working well. Well, good afternoon and welcome.
As I mentioned, Kevin, before we start with the questions, you have about 5 minutes to give an opening statement.
Okay. Just jump in, is that fine?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. People in the back, you know, if your students came and sat in the back, what would you do? You would either go teach from the back or you would make a move to the front, right? Well, anyway, welcome and thank you. Thank you very much. This is a true honor and a privilege for me. I grew up in Fresno. Some of you may know that. Some of you may not know that. I remember the first time I went to COS. I was a freshman in high school, and we had our Valley Championship swim meet right here at the pool, and I have fond memories of coming here throughout the years. This is a great privilege to kind of have the opportunity to represent COS to the community, and I really appreciate this. So thank you all for showing up today. Before I get started, I want to give a quick story. I have 3 children, and my son, I have a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And we were talking one day, and he said, Daddy, where are you going? And he says, well, I'm going to go try to be a college president. And my daughter says, are the people going to vote you in? Is that how it works? I said, well, no, not really, but so my son says, if you become college president, are you going to know Barack Obama? And my youngest just says, I really don't care, but can we get a house with 2 stories if we have to? If I'm lucky enough to represent you, I always say this, you know, I'm going to be in a 2-story house, barbecuing with a swimming pool, and President Obama will be visiting. You'll know I They asked a little bit about my background, and I lead into that. I am a father of 3. I met my wife up in graduate school, up at Montana State University. We were both in the math program. And that's where I fell in love with community colleges. That's where I fell in love with teaching. That's where I fell in love with helping students. And I was a teacher down in Arizona, right there on the border in Yuma, Arizona, for 7 years. And I really liked working with students. I enjoyed teaching. What I learned as a teacher was you have to communicate in many different modalities. You have to communicate in written language, in numbers. There's an old saying, do I have any math teachers in the audience here? There's a couple. There's an old saying in math during the calculus reform. If you can show it numerically, you can show it graphically, and then you can show it symbolically, you help students understand. I really take that into being a teacher. So I consider myself to be a teacher first and foremost. I bring that to this position, my experience being a teacher. I was a director for institutional effectiveness, research planning, and grants. I've been an honors program director. I bring those experiences here. I see you started an honors program with foundation support. I think that's wonderful. I just think that in these budget times that you have the fortitude to support those honors students. I think that that's just a wonderful statement. Another reason why I was attracted to this position. After I was director, I moved to Yuba College. Yuba College is in Marysville, California, north of Sacramento, between Chico and Sacramento. I was dean for math, engineering, science, and health. From that dean's position, I learned to grab all different types of programs to get people working together to come up with a common goal, to move an agenda. When the faculty and our whole division really started talking about active learning, that's when it's like, boy, this is fun now because we're engaged in how we can engage students in the classroom, and we're having discussions about it. And I learned that as a dean, and that's what I would bring to this position as a college president. Finally, for the last 6 or 7 years or so, I've been vice president. I've been vice president for both academic and student services. We have that combined position. Like you have the 2 vice presidents, we're in a little different structure. We changed from a single college district, like College of Sequoias, to a multi-college district, like State Center with Fresno and Reedley. We changed that about 3 years ago when Woodland became a college. So I do have experience in a multi-college conversion, the allocation formulas, the policies, how you navigate that whole process going through. I have experiences with that. I have pros and cons that I can be happy to share. I also have a large background in construction. We're building a 60,000 square foot education center in Yuba City, over in Sutter County. The first education center in that county. There are 4 or 5 counties in the state of California that do not have a higher education center in them. Sutter County is one of them. We are building a 60,000 square foot education center. We've navigated that process on how to become an approved center. We've also navigated the process on how not to gut the main campus in order to build the off-campus centers. So when I add that all together, I think I have some experiences that pertain to this particular job, and I'm happy to move on to the questions in the sake of time.
Thank you. First question. It is no secret California is in dire straits.
Our biggest challenge, I'm going to be honest with you, was how to schedule that in today's budget crisis so that we do not take away all of the resources from the main campus. That was our biggest challenge. Woodland Community College became a fully accredited institution back in 2008. We changed from a single college district to a multi-college district. I have that experience where we maintain the quality. Are we just chasing dollars for the center funding status? Or are we chasing dollars for the college status? Or do we have a plan on how we're going to reach out to these communities? I think that's an important discussion that we have to have. I've been through and had those discussions. I've skinned my knees on some of the decisions. We've fallen down on some of the decisions, but we figured out along the way how to make it work. The 5th thing was the technological training for the state's workforce. We've worked hard to come up with hybrid training, and interestingly enough, for the hybrid cars, one of our largest training partners are the police and the fire departments. So just show of hands for the heck of it, how many people own a hybrid vehicle? I got a couple of people out there. When that car is in a wreck, the firemen do not know, should they come up and try to get you out of it, or they can be electrocuted? So not only do we have our automotive technicians, but we have the first responder, the paramedics, and the firemen trained on how to deal with hybrid cars. We've expanded our nursing programs, our radiologic technology programs, and our psychiatric technician programs in order to meet the state's workforce needs. This is the sad part about community colleges. We are the answer to what ails California right now. Training people, getting them in the workforce. And they're just not funding us to the level we need to be funded. The last thing I want to talk about is honors and liberal arts, close to home. I happen to have the opportunity to go to Loyola University in Chicago. I mentioned swimming over here. That swimming thing tended to work out for me because I got a full ride scholarship in college. So it paid for my college. And I went to Loyola University. My family could not have afforded to send me to Loyola University. We were just a working class family. That liberal arts education was so important to me. And when I became honors program director, I really sold the idea of having a liberal arts education close to home, that our students should have that opportunity. So those 6 things, I think, really answer the question. Open access, how to pay for education, the technology divide with our students, opening centers in our communities, technologically training the state's workforce, and having a liberal arts education close to home.
Thank you. Question number 2. Given the backdrop of severe budget reductions, a diverse student body, low student retention rates, demand for courses, and a high proportion of students who come to us underprepared for college, if you were selected as the next president of COS, how would you propose the college respond to the demands placed upon it?
First, I think it's not up to me, and I can answer almost any question like that. I think it's up to us. You'll find that I'm an inclusionary person. I give away the locus of control, and it's up to us to decide what we want our vision to be, who we want to serve, how we're going to serve them. I think that's for us to decide. I think we need to also decide upon what level of quality we're going to live with. I recently attended another college's board meeting. They were going to cut football, they were going to cut aquatics, and that's where I wanted to go watch. And they were going to cut summer school, sound familiar? And they were going to do something with veterans. I can't remember the details, but I wanted to hear them talk about aquatics. And what was interesting was their decision that they made for the football and the aquatics team, they really backed into, here's the level of quality we're going to accept. They never had that discussion about what level of quality will we accept for these programs in our summer school, but they backed into that decision. Should we cut it, should we not cut it? Well, let's cut it, and you have to go raise foundation money. That was the answer. Well, that answer predetermined what level of quality that program is going to be. They never once had the discussion about, are we satisfied with having this left with the foundation-raised efforts? So what level of quality are we going to decide upon? Something that I would do if I were superintendent president is come up with a decision-making matrix. Some decision-making criteria. Maybe not matrix is the right word, but criteria. What do we base our decisions upon? What do we value, but what do we base our decisions upon? I talked about a hint a little bit about that, about the quality, what level of quality we're going to have. If there's a certain level of quality, maybe we should not support that. If we're going to drop down below that line. The decision-making criteria. I think we did a fiscal stability plan that looks at not just the numbers coming in, but also what our cash flow analysis is. What risk can be taken, and are we going to take calculated risk? Do we as a college decide this is a risk we're willing to take, or is this a risk that we're not willing to take financially? We need leaders from throughout the college who are going to make decisions when necessary. We're going to step up and make that decision. And finally, in response to these, the best thing I think we can do is advocate, advocate, advocate. We can use our students to help us advocate. We can use our faculty and staff. But we need to advocate both locally and at the state, and if possible, at the national level. We need to be in Sacramento so our locally elected officials know what COS means to this community. I love your mission statement, how it talks about the economic vitality of the area. I love that. And I think our locally elected officials are aware of that, but we have to broaden that to California and to the state as well.
Thank you. Question number 3. Explain your understanding of the recently adopted Student Success Task Force recommendations. Describe how you would implement those recommendations here at COS in order to improve student success, and describe the opportunities and challenges this will present.
My understanding, first of all, is it's focusing on success. For years, since community colleges started in California, it was access. Let's get them in. Let's get everybody in the door. Let's get them signed up for classes. Come one, come all. Give me your tired, your poor. Do you know that the land-grant institutions were signed by Congress in Lincoln during the time of the Civil War? Land-grant institutions were started in our nation's darkest hour. But they were there to educate the sons and daughters of the working class citizens. Community colleges are the same thing. We are here to educate everybody. But the Student Success Task Force focuses on success, getting people to graduate, not just getting them in the door. Some items that off the top of my head that I wrote: placement, orientation, required student services, professional development. There's a big controversy with the use of categorical funds. Should you have latitude in where they go? The basic skills should be required in the first year, being a math teacher. It always bothered me when students would say, it's my last semester, I need to get through math to graduate. And you probably heard that story yourself. I'm going to wait till English. I'm afraid of that, so I'll wait. K-12 outcomes, what are students coming to us with from the K-12, and having a common assessment. Those are the elements of the Student Success Plan. I think we need to look at how that fits with our strategic plan, how that fits in with our accreditation reports. Our visit is in this fall, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the audience participatory part. So we have to look at how that student success fits in. Luckily enough, reading our mission, reading our strategic plan, I think they all align, so we don't have to change the ship there. Sacramento is now in the middle of making policies for this student success plan. They are asking that these discussions happen at the local level. They are making the policy statements. Some of those are starting to be heard by the Board of Governors. We asked them in Sacramento, I'm only 45 minutes away, who are you including in this group? And a lot of times they'll kind of say, well, it was us. Here in Sacramento, we didn't really include anybody else out in the field. So we need to have the discussions here at the local level and feed them into Sacramento. We need to have those discussions. To answer this question in particular is I would like the Senate to have a conversation with the board about how these implementations impact the college's sequoias. The Senate should have that conversation. The board then can help advocate for our needs, how it relates to our particular situation. I think it's interesting that when the first draft of the Student Success Task Force came out, it was all about degrees, degrees, degrees. Well, what do you think LA Trade and Technical College was thinking? Think of that name, Los Angeles Trade and Technical College. Do you think their focus is really on degrees? And it took those people to stand up and say, hey, your measure of success is not our measure of success. So I think we need to advocate there. The board is going to set our policy, the Senate, Academic Senate, and the administration work out the details of the policy, how it impacts college sequoias. Different colleges define what success is. And finally, I wrote once again, we have to tie that into our accreditation planning and our outcomes. I see we're in the middle of these recommendations. And I think that's a key word is recommendations. They are not laws, they are not regulations, and we need to be participatory in shaping those so that it impacts our students appropriately.
Thank you. Final question. Give us 2 or more examples of your use of innovative budgeting in good times and in bad, and tell us both the effects on the college and the general financial strategies or approaches to be drawn from your experiences.
Can you tell us when the good times are here?
Still waiting.
Still waiting? Yeah, remember when we thought like 2002 was bad? And I don't mean to make light of that. It's just kind of like, you know, what else can you give me kind of thing. 2 things. One is to consolidate for efficiency, and the other is to focus on what student success needs. And when I say consolidate for efficiency, one thing we did was we were faced with budget cuts. Having the opportunity of being both academic and student services and like our construction projects and lots of different things running through my office, pretty much everything except for maintenance and operations kind of comes through my office one way or another. But consolidate for efficiency. We would true up in certain areas. We found some weird things. I see the basketball coaches back there. Just because he's wearing a big shirt, that's the only thing I can see. Andy's 6'6" tall. As an example, our dues for our conference were buried in the president's budget. It was not a true budget in the athletic department to say, we need this much to belong to the Bay Valley Conference. So we moved that to the appropriate budget. So we trued some areas up. We know what the cost for officials were. I'm just using athletics as an example. We knew what that true cost was going to be. But then at the same time, we consolidated for efficiency. We looked at repair budgets, field trips. We took the playoff accounts for the athletics because when they didn't make playoffs, they had a nice little cushy fund. And then, of course, the goal is to make playoffs, right? Every year, that's the goal. Yes, he said yes. But when they don't make it, then they had this fund to go buy some other equipment, and there's other people who could use that. So we looked at consolidating those to a central location. So we have a large repair budget for the college in one central location. Now when something in our machine shop breaks, we actually have the wherewithal to pay for it within our college allocation. We don't have to go to the board and ask to dip into the reserves. But instead of everybody having their own little bitty repair budgets, we consolidated. Major purchases. This actually allowed us to purchase the computers for our Sutter Center because we consolidated a lot of these entities, and we've been very fiscally prudent over this year. So as we're ending this year, we have enough money to start buying some computers for our education center that we're opening. So we don't really have to dip into the bond or the contingency or next year's budget as we open up that center. We looked at what our base budget is and what the contingency budgets are. So the one thing that I'll throw out is consolidate for efficiency. The second thing, we were forced with layoffs a couple of years ago, and our board kind of put together a plan and gave us numbers on a certain, certain number of staff levels that we had to do. And we looked at an onion philosophy with the student first. What's in the middle of the onion, and you got the layers, you get the outside of the onion, you get further and further apart. So we looked at what's important in that onion. It's the think student first, and then make those decisions. We decided upon what was important, both inside and outside of the classroom. I'm actually kind of, proud that we grew certain areas. It was, horrible to go through, but certain areas we all decided were important. The Writing Language Development Center that I talked about, we actually grew that during the budget cuts of 2008, 9, 10, going in there. We actually grew that area. We grew certain student support services that we all knew our students needed. Counseling. Our students needed counseling. We started a mental health center on campus. Our mental health center on campus, when we opened it last September, saw it was like 110 students in that fall semester. And we didn't open it until the end of September. We had no idea. We knew there was a need out there for some personal counseling, but we had no idea that we would be having group therapies and just the volume of the students coming in with their counseling issues. A lot of it having to do with jobs and the economy and things like that, but also some mental health issues. We looked at foundation support. The question is, will administrators take a hit in their salary when we go through budget cuts? I can answer that yes, but we used our money to support certain programs. Our MESA program is actually funded by support from myself and a number of our faculty members who gave money to keep the MESA program going during the budget cuts. We looked at what support services we're going to protect, and then we looked out to the grassroots level, the faculty and the staff for the leadership. The faculty and staff came forward with scheduling patterns, the Shakespeare or the differential equations or the physics 4A series, how they're going to schedule those on a regular basis. Because we know those get low numbers, but let's schedule them on a regular basis so we can predict when that is going to come. We can balance some of those scheduling. So when we were forced with layoffs, we looked at the onion philosophy and what was most important for student success and then built out from there.
Thank you. You have about 6 minutes to give a closing statement. You don't have to use all 6 minutes, but you can use as much as you need.
Okay. You can pull out my wallet and show pictures of my kids if I I kind of want to give you 4 takeaways, and I hope that I've shown this today. The 4 takeaways that I want to give you is I'm a teacher first and foremost. The second one is that I advocate for students. The third thing is I have broad experience beyond just being a teacher and then a dean and being a big dean and then the big dean becomes a vice president. I have experience throughout that. The last one, and I hope I've shown this, is I care about people. As a teacher, somebody once said, we're all teachers, we're in this business, you have the heart of a teacher. I got turned on by a class called college teaching. That's what started my love for helping students. To this day, I still consider myself a teacher. I don't know what the May revise. I haven't seen details because I didn't want to check my phone walking over here before this public forum, but the May revise. If I was superintendent president, you know today I will be having a long, hard thought process how I could communicate that May revise. How does that impact colleges' employees? What way could I help communicate that message so that everybody understands it? What teaching philosophies could I use to help every employee know what that impact is to college employees, what we can do about it, what it means, what we can plan for. I hope I've shown that I have a heart of a teacher, and I really, truly strive to do that in everything that I do. Next is I advocate for the students. I like to eat in the cafeteria. I like to stop students as they're sitting there, sit next to them, and talk about them. I walked through some of your classrooms today, talking to people, talking to students. We kind of have a motto that we go by. It's think, student, then decide. Simple, little poster. Think, student, then decide. What's best for the students? And always keep that in the back of our mind. The third thing is the broad experience that I bring. I've been a teacher. If I'm sitting out there, and I have sat there as we've hired presidents in my college throughout the years, the first question I would have, well, I have many questions of the guy sitting up here in the suit. The first question I would have is, have you ever sat in a classroom? Have you ever taught students? Have you ever had to deal with finals week and turn in grades? Have you ever had students come crying to your office because something's not going right and they missed that test? Have you ever had an administrator try to talk about a strategic plan when all you care about is getting ready for the first day of classes? The answer is yes, all of those. I've been there. I've been a teacher. I know what it's like to be in your shoes. And that's a question that I would have. But I've also had experiences with human resources. I've been in negotiations. I've settled, I've I've settled some very difficult negotiation issues. I have construction background. I've opened centers. I've helped a multi-college conversion with allocation formulas. I would also want to know what this person's background is in accreditation, and I've written the accreditation documents. I'm an accreditation liaison officer. I've been on other teams' visits to other schools, and I have that broad experience. But the last thing is, I care about the people. I want to get to know you all. I want to get to learn what makes you tick, why you enjoy working here, what's special about our students. I really care about the people. I'd like to be a colleague when necessary, but I do have the guts to make a decision when that's required. And when I make a decision, I will explain my actions, and you will know why I made that decision. You may not agree with me, but you'll know where I stand. And I hope that I've shown those things. And once again, I really want to thank you for this opportunity. This is a great privilege for me. I really enjoyed this school. My best friend came here out of high school. I've had just a fondness for the school. I mean, had I not gotten a full ride scholarship, I probably would have came here myself, to be honest with you, to play water polo or Bruce Montgomery. Probably would have been coming here to play. So I really thank you for this opportunity, and I appreciate this. Thank you for your time.
Give about a 10-minute break. The next candidate will take the stage at 2:45.
Greg, we're back when we yeah, we hired the guy.
They could tear the last thing. They could tear apart
Four wheels and where we
It's worked out well.
That's common. Teachers union was separate, management was separate, except for the central office. The CSCA crossed. So it's one economically one
It's like trying to go come around.
Mr. Mann, how are you doing, Tim?
Never unified. That was close. They unified the year after I was going through it when I was, and then had to vote.
It is fundamentally
But I didn't want to change it. Just say yes. Change order? Yes.
No, they're very much.
Hey, if you decide you're going to run, you can rerun.
The way the system is now, when I took it, there was a lot of subtlety, but the bottom line is you had to get out of there. It's so much for that.
replace Tim's lens cap.
Is that?
So all the things I can do, I can replace Tim's
No
lens
way.
cap. Just a lens cap. But
But that's not an ordinary cap, though.
what?
That's not an ordinary cap, like a standard size.
Oh, I'll just put mine on there and figure out where.
Gotta be in his storage.
Unless.
What is that?
Check the seats again.
Is that in your pocket?
It really is like with that pocket, it's sitting all the time. Like, wow. I can use it.
How much do you use to?
I didn't think it was fill the place, but I thought there'd be more people in church.
Yeah, basically, take the 130 or
I counted 90.
Counted 90?
they're in the take that number, put it all together.
You know what those are? Yeah. A lot of people say if you get straight in, they'll stay. That's what,
Put all
We've got, they can track the numbers, so we've got 44 people watching it.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of them are from here.
That's all? I thought there'd be a lot more.
It's not the best thing to watch at 2:39, I'm sure.
Probably not. I'm off and I'm here. Oh, yeah.
What corner did we grab?
Jump starting through the afternoon. It's better than a 5-hour interview show.
I don't know.
Yeah, to go get the phone call.
See, and that's what's. So we're
Speaking of which,
you have to go. You have to.
Can't wait.
no more.
Oh, for sure. Hey, she's gonna guess from the Curious. Yeah, Curious.
What?
Curious.
What's that?
That brand.
That single cup one where you can be able to have the way in and you press the button and it comes out.
Wow. Is it like bomb or?
Yeah.
They're like industrial.
And you're responsible for the right now. It's like I got one.
Why is that? I was thinking either managing editor.
About coming in the front door rather than going in the back door. Taking the hole and backing stuff off is taking it away. You have to say, okay, so what are we really getting at? Not what are we saying, get ready.
So I gotta take these shots and I gotta telephoto back at 3.
Well, the only way it could be
It's only 4 now, right? Yeah, it's the first of them. I have a good shot of all 4 of them, dude. Like,
Perfect.
little gallery.
And then,
the ending was
can you put all 4
last fall, and so if we didn't have the same number,
Maybe.
then they put Photoshop. Yeah,
I never photo sticks before. Can I give it a shot?
You don't even have the stickers side by side by side by side.
so if they were next to each other.
If I have to.
Well, I meant, that way,
It's like you're
that way, I can put a few people on it.
But it takes time to recover. And I don't think.
I have math before. And she was the first time I showed up in class recession.
Maybe she had to have the impetus.
No, you have to have the impetus. Only when it's easier for you to do.
You guys can hear my stomach growling? So be able to shoot
this direction, not in this direction.
So those are all just, you know, you have to bite off the
not with my normal lens,
set the stage and I'm going to do the ball or this is one from the Midwest. Evidently, she got a shit.
You're on it, Bumper.
Don't talk to me. So you make it through tonight.
What?
Yeah, there's all kinds of them. It's just set to one frequency now. It used to pick, remember you used to pick it up with this? Did you change channels on that?
I can pick it up on my transmitter now.
Oh,
There's nothing.
because it used to pick up green. Yeah, there's a number. I haven't changed the channels though. So I don't know. Have to look into that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Marnie Fisher.
Hello. Welcome to this presentation. Let me move my face out of the way. As you saw, I was putting up a visual aid, and it made a perfect trip all the way from Minnesota to up until right now, and it'll go. But we will go with the broken pieces and continue from there. Just want to say a few things. I want to say to you that I am indeed honored and privileged to be here today, and I thank you for being here as well. Now, if I were sitting in the audience, I would be thinking to myself, who is this Marnie Fisher anyway? And what are some of her beliefs and philosophies and values? And most importantly, how is she going to help us move forward? Well, in this period of time, I can only give you a snapshot of this. But what I'd like to do is just take you back to the early years of my life, because as you well know, people develop their character and their values and their beliefs from that. I was born and raised in poverty on a dairy farm. I was the youngest of 8 children, and as my dad would always say, I had 10 hungry mouths to feed. And so I grew up in that kind of environment. But what I learned from that environment are some powerful lessons. One, growing up on a dairy farm, I learned what a strong work ethic is. I learned how to survive and thrive even growing up in poverty. And I learned how to most effectively use the resources as efficiently as possible. And that's not a bad training ground for a president because of the resources that we're dealing with in higher education as of today. But most importantly, what I want to tell you about and why I have such a passion for education is I had this defining moment in my life, as many of you have had in your lives, I'm sure. And I'm going to take you back to first grade. It was the summer of before I went into first grade, and somehow I found myself wandering into the classroom of my first grade teacher. Now, we had a farm that was in town by the church and the school, so it was very easy to be there. But I remember when I walked in that classroom and I saw my first grade teacher for the first time, Sister Sardo. Sister Sardo had a heart full of joy and passion for students. And I remember that she allowed me to help her, and so I was cleaning the chalkboards, and I was putting books on the bookshelf, and I was dusting and doing all those things, and then she rewarded me at the end with a coloring book and asked me to color a picture of a turtle, which I then did do. And I offered it to Sister Sardo, and Sister Sardo praised me. Then and there, I knew that I would like this place called school. Because Sister Sardo was so student-centered, and I knew that I would like to be like Sister Sardo and help students and help those who are helping students. Because Sister Sardo understood the totality of a student. She understood the heart of the student, the mind, body, and the soul of the student, much like you do. Sister Sardo was all about student success and felt that all components needed to be nurtured. And that's what makes me so excited about standing here before you today, because you get it. In the things that I've read about you, student success is abounds in your literature. It's in your mission statement, right? You talk about student learning and how important that is, and that's the core value of your institution, and how you will provide programs and services in order for that to occur. You talk about it in your college model, and you're going to help me out with this. Your college model is College of the Sequoias, the first step to success, right? Okay, you talk about it there. In your strategic planning, you write about in the spirit of student success. Isn't that wonderful? You're always talking about success and building on it, and that's fantastic. Now, how do we go about being successful in educating a student? Well, Aristotle talks about this. It talks about the mind, body, and soul of a person, and they all have to be working in harmony in order for that to make it happen. So how do you do this at the College of Sequoias? And again, the reason why I'm bringing this up and how you do it is because my beliefs and my philosophy and values match yours. And I think that's important. You look at the student as a holistic kind of entity. And I think it's important. So academics, what do you talk about with the academics? And I honor you for all of this. You talk about pedagogy and different methodologies of reaching different learning styles. You talk about engaging them in the classroom. You talk about helping them with job shadowing and service learning and internships and tutoring and academic support systems and all these hosts of things that are wonderful. You also recognize that the student is comprised of a body part, and the body and the mind have to be healthy in order for the student to be totally functioning. And what do you have here? You have wonderful athletics. You have wonderful physical education program, the curriculum you offer there. But not only that, if they're not athletes, you are talking about, in your strategic plan, which I think is so exciting, you talk about wellness, you talk about biking and jogging and nurturing all of that. You talk about eating healthy foods and providing healthy snacks. I mean, you just get it here, and that's really exciting. And then the final part, the arts. So we have the academics, we have the activities, and the arts. The soul of the student needs to sing as well. And I had a wonderful opportunity when I was here as a semifinalist to watch a production, The Hobbit, on the stage. And it was just a phenomenal production. The soul sang. I visited your art gallery when I was here last time. Beautiful artwork. You have a wonderful music program. You have activities which engage students in leadership development. And so you comprise all of that. And that's why I'm excited about standing here being a candidate for the presidency. Because Plato says this, that which we honor in society is what gets cultivated. And you truly seem committed to cultivating the heart, mind, body, and soul of the student so that the student can be ignited at this institution. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. We'll move on to the questions now. First question. There's no secret California is in dire straits. There's also no secret that the community colleges in California have far more and much different challenges than the K-12 and university systems. Please identify 5 or more primary differences and challenges and explain how your educational and work experience has prepared you to take on the challenges that are unique to a California community college.
Okay, first of all, I want to talk to you about my educational background. I earned an undergraduate degree in speech communication and theater. I went on and I earned a master's degree in human resource administration. I earned another master's degree in communication studies, and I earned a doctorate degree in educational leadership with an emphasis in teaching and learning. And I think that of all the institutions, the community college has the most difficult one. Why? Why are we different? We are different because we have to teach all different levels of students. So, that's one of the major things that makes us different. We have to reach out to the different learners. We have people that need remedial help. We have honor students. And we have to figure out how can we do this all in the same kind of collective setting. We have students that need English as a second language. And it's our job as educational institutions, community colleges, when they transfer onto the four-year program, that they're successful, right? Okay, so how are we going to get those students who need English as a second language to be successful? We offer courses. I suggest that we look at not only offering courses, but we also start dialoguing with the community where English as a second language is an issue. So we talk to the leaders of those communities. Let's look at possible partnerships. How can we mentor them before they even get to our institution? Okay, so that language does not become a barrier in, the dire straits of the budgets and the situations that we're dealing with. Okay, the remedial help. How do we get students prepared for English and math and to be better in the remedial help? Things that I have done as an administrator that has worked effectively. So we've called an AccuPlacer test, and that's an assessment test, and to find out where they're placed for courses, which you do as well, you assess your students to find out the proper course placement. We took it out to sophomores in the high school, our area high school, to let them know where they are, so they could take corrective action in their junior and senior year before beginning in our college. And that helped a lot. We saw a lot less remedial students coming through our doors. We also took an analysis of the student body and the high schools that came from the school districts, and we looked at what was going on there and how can we better prepare them. We met with the superintendents and said, they seem to not be as strong in the writing fundamentals. So how can our faculty help mentor so that the students are where they need to be? You want to address the problems before they become problems to you. We also did that, and I know you do that now with Kids College, bringing students in, kids, to get them acclimated to a college setting. We did that as well. We did it, and we focused on students that were first-generation college students and students of diversity and whatever that may have not had as much access to college. And we introduced them to non-traditional career fields and just had them get a sense of the college setting. So we're looking at all of these different things. In addition, one of the beauties of a community college is that I love that word community college, because in community college there's unity within the community. And we are called upon to serve our community. So it is imperative that we involve our community in the dialogue, in the decision making, and asking them what their needs are so that we can better prepare programs. We're much quicker than four-year universities in adapting our curriculum and changing to what fits the needs of the community. So that's important. That's another major challenge or difference. But all of this stems around the fact that we really, really need to communicate. We have this just-in-time learning, for instance. Another thing in regard to unity and community, when I was the CEO at Minnesota West, the community came to me and said, we need a truck driving program. Okay, did we have semis? We didn't have semis hanging around. No, we didn't have a lot of things. And we thought, okay, it truly has to be a partnership. And so what did we do? They said, look, you can use our semis, you can use these things, just figure out a way of how we can get more truck drivers out there because we really need truck drivers. So again, it's that communicating and that collaborating and that developing of partnerships that makes community colleges so special and so unique and helps to deal with some of these challenges that we have at our institution that other institutions perhaps don't have.
Thank you. Question number 2. Given the backdrop of severe budget reductions, a diverse student body, low student retention rates, demand for courses, and a high proportion of students who come to us underprepared for college, if you were selected as the next president of COS, how would you propose a college respond to the demands placed upon it?
I had to smile when I read this question because I thought, could you add anything else on this challenge? Of course, we live in challenging times. Absolutely. And I'll be talking about that in my closing remarks. But in regard to severe budget reductions, what we have to do is look at how can we operationalize things and be most efficient. Remember when I told you I grew up on a farm and I grew up in poverty? We had to make the best use of our resources. So I'm always looking at how can we best utilize our resources, be most effective, be most cost effective and conservative in that. But in regard to that, we have to look at different revenue streams. We have to look at alternative funding. That's really important. That's something that I have a forte about. I was the executive director of a couple of foundations as a college administrator. I was always asking for money. I love asking for money on behalf of the students because not only does it benefit the students, right? Who else does it benefit? This is interactive. The college, and then employees, and the world at large, right? So when you go out and ask, it's not a selfish thing to ask for. It's saying we are going to help make the world a better place. This is our mission, and we need the resources to do it. So I go and ask for money, for scholarship money, because as you know, tuition keeps rising, and that's going to become a critical factor. And I'm going to say a little bit about that in my closing remarks. And pretty soon, I don't have to have closing remarks. But anyway, so you look at that kind of partnership. I talked about the truck driving partnership. Another kind of partnership that we engaged in when I was a CEO was with our biotech students. They got to work with the veterinary sciences on figuring out vaccines for pigs. It was a partnership. They got to use their science labs. How exciting is that? So when you're looking at budget reductions, you have to still educate them. That's our mission. So how do you go about doing it? Okay? We have a diverse student body. So we have to make sure that we're educating the total student. And I liked when you had that discussion about different learning styles that I read, because even different cultures learn in different ways. Different people learn in different ways, but also different cultures. So how do you go about best addressing that? When you come together, you have what I think is called FAPES, faculty, help me out. Sorry? Faculty inquiry groups, where you study this process. I think that's so exciting. And you look at it and you say, how can we best reach that student learner? We can't forget about technology in this whole process, because technology is important. If we don't have the human resources, what can technology do to supplement alternative learning? Okay, so there might be remedial things that technology can do that is there that the students can access. Low student retention rates. Well, I truly believe that retention doesn't begin when they come to the college, right? And I talked a little bit about that. You have to partner with that K through 12, saying this is what us college students needs to be successful in a college setting. And so if they have to beef up on their math, their skills, or their English skills, or whatever, you have to, again, work in those partnerships, have that dialogue, because we all want what's best for students, not just at the college. So the diverse student body and low retention rates. Austin is a theorist, and Vince Tinto, perhaps you've heard of them, but they talk a lot about engaging the learner for retention rates. Actively engaging the learner. You talk about that. Passive learning is not very conducive to retention rates. And I think community colleges do best, and you do it fantastically because you get it. You talk about how are you going to engage that learner inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And that internship and that service learning and all of that is really important for the retention rates. Also, involving them in extracurricular activities is important, as long as it doesn't become overwhelming and take over the classroom, right? Because it's that sense of belonging that they need to have with the institution. How you treat them, with what warmth. When I come on this campus, and when I was coming last time as a semifinalist, everybody here, and they didn't know who I was treating me with such kindness and warmth. That's going to go a long way for retention, because it shows you care. Sister Sardo, she cared about me. Why did I get so excited about education? Because Sister Sardo cared about me. She praised me. She affirmed me. She helped me through the process. So we have to have all of those resources together, whether they're academic or counseling or student support services, so on, to help with the retention rates. So that's how I plan to do it. I have a background in all of that, and I've worked in all different avenues of education, which makes me excited to be a presidential candidate, because I've actually thematically, systematically designed my professional career to become a college president. I felt I needed a strong background in academic affairs, so I was a teacher, I orientated faculty, I did my dissertation on master teachers, what constitutes them, I evaluated faculty, I evaluated students, I had that whole picture. I was the vice president of student services and institutional advancement. And when we talk about retention, all of it plays together. Peter Senge talks about systems thinking. It all plays together. It's an integrated planning kind of process. Academics plays one part of it. Student services and the counseling and the financial aid plays another part. Institutional advancement, the kind of funding that you can bring so you can have those courses that they need so that you can have the scholarship dollars to help them with funding. It is a complex entire picture, but it all works interactively together to help benefit students.
Thank you. Question number 3. Explain your understanding of the recently adopted Student Success Task Force recommendations. Describe how you would implement those recommendations here at COS in order to improve student success, and describe the opportunities and challenges this will present.
Okay, I need my glasses for this, excuse me. First of all, I'm a woman of integrity. So let me tell you that to honestly answer this question, I don't know as much about it as I should. Which doesn't mean that I wouldn't learn, and I would learn fast, because I do believe in research and learning about things. So I'm going to talk to you as best as I can with the knowledge that I have. I know that I read about it, and there's some issues out there. I don't know what the final recommendations are, but I know there's things like increased college and career readiness, and we'll put the K-12 partnership about that. Well, I've already talked about that, right? Going in and mentoring those teachers and saying this is what it needs to be a collegiate student, and how can we work together, and how can we bring in that kind of career readiness, and what can they do at the high school level so that when they transfer to us, they have those fundamental knowledge. Another thing that I believe that in that plan is the strength and support for entering students, a centralized assessment. And I talked about that we assess the students that come in, and you do that as well, right? You assess the students that come into this college to find out where are they properly placed. And then what do they need in order to do that? Now, there's some dialogue out there about that in regard to some colleges, so that they're ready to go on. Some colleges are looking at best practices in achieving the dream, which is something that you talk about as well, where if they're remedial classes, they don't get out of that with a D. Okay, so some institutions are looking at that so that when they really go on, they can be successful. So you have to look at that kinds of alternatives. Developing and using technology applications to better guide the students. Again, I don't know if you have this system, but one of the things that we use as administrators is what's called smart thinking. It was a tutorial program for students, and students could access that 24 hours a day. And at first I had to be convinced that an online system would be conducive for tutoring. But we do live in a change of technology, and we do have students coming to us that are a little bit more computer savvy and more acclimated to that, although we should never forget the human element because that's critical to the development of students as well. But smart thinking, they were able to send in their research papers in advance and get critiques from them and work on math problems any hour of the day. And so that's a nice service and a benefit, and students use that a lot, and that seemed to be pretty successful. So again, when we can use technology and save our human resources for other things, I think that's really important. I think that we have to look at, for student success, first-year experience. What are we doing for first-year experience? Right now I'm a consultant to a major university in Minnesota, and I was asked to develop a retention plan for them. One of the things that I've been working on with them is assessing how students learn. Because as I said before, students learn in different ways. How many of you are faculty here? Okay, so you're very aware of that, right? Students have different learning styles. There's a theory out there called learning cycle, where students learn through feeling and watching and thinking and doing and all of that. So how do you operationalize that mode of thinking? So you look at that and say, how can we better reach our students in regard to the learning? So a first-year learning experience course, what I have the students do is take an assessment, which I have to tell you, I got for free, permission to use it. When we're talking about resources, I will dig and dig and dig to find everything that I can that's free that will help us or at a reduced cost. Anyway, and I found that assessment guide, and it assesses how students learn. And then what I did is I made a package together and said, okay, if you have this kind of learning style and you learn best this way, these are the things that you want to do when you're in the classroom. Because not all teachers will teach to that particular learning style, although we're getting better when we understand more and more about pedagogy, and you're certainly open to that. So we'll get better and better as teachers, and having that Center for Teaching and Learning is really important. But looking at those things, a first-year experience, and how can we keep students there? And I know you talked about making sure that students are having classes right away when they first get there, the ones that will help them be successful throughout their career. I guess that's basically what I have to say in regard to that. Again, it's always what I said before, and what you do is you build on student success. And we keep thinking about that, and we keep the student always at the center of our mission, and always realize what can we do best to educate these students and have them become successful and have good learning outcomes. Then I think that we continue to ask those questions, we'll continue to search for positive answers.
Thank you. Final question. Give us 2 or more examples of your use of innovative budgeting in good times and in bad, and tell us both the effects on the college and the general financial strategies or approaches to be drawn from your experiences.
I don't know that I would call this innovative budgeting, but I would call it collaborative, and I very much believe in collaboration and collective intelligence. One of the ways that I budget is I use the faculty senate, the shared governance, and the classified staff and whatever. And what I do is I have them come and submit budgets, and I have them write what's their first priority, second priority, third priority. And then what I do is we have a fiscal affairs committee, and we look at that, and what we do is we decide how much money do we have that we can spend for these things. And then prior to even divvying it out, from that money, we take a certain percentage off so that we're never put the college in dire financial straits, okay? That process seems to work extremely well. And then, as the semester evolves and we get to the second semester, we can start releasing some more of that money. So I wouldn't call it necessarily such an innovative approach, but it's a very successful approach because everyone's involved and the priorities are given, and there's people, again, around, they're representing all different entities of the campus, so that we look at it and make sure that we're distributing the monies in a fair and equitable manner. And so I believe in that zero-based budgeting, too, where, for instance, when I was the CEO, there was this biotech program that we started, which cost a lot of money. And so we had to put a lot of resources in there. But then the next year, the art program needed kilns. And then the following year, the drama department needed theater curtains. So you look at what are the highest priorities in a variety of ways, and safety issues and so on and so forth, and you build a budget around that. And we're very successful in honoring those things. Again, what I want to say in regard to this is that I have, and when I say I mean we, have been very good about trying to raise alternative dollars and finding different revenue streams so that money doesn't always have to be an issue. And I also think it's important that we need to focus on what we want and not on what we don't have, and then how do you go about getting it. So those are the strategies I would use when I'm looking at financial packages and how to help the financial situation, is to always look at it in a very proactive way so that in good times or bad, we have the money that we need. I mean, I think that we have to have a healthy contingency budget so that in those lean times, some of that money can be taken out if so needed. Those are kind of the strategies or approaches that I use. But I have to tell you, when you talk about one innovative way of doing things, again, I think it's important for us to think out of the box. And here's just an example of an innovative thing. When I was the vice president in a small rural community in Fergus Falls, I was always concerned about campus security. And the town and the president of the college thought, oh, this is Mayberry, you know. Everybody's nice here, and so on and so forth. Well, that doesn't mean that whether everyone's nice or not, that we don't need campus security, because we were on a major freeway and it was very easy access to our college. And so I kept talking about campus security. And one of the things is that we only had a small budget for it, and we felt the most critical time would be at night when it's dark, right? And so I thought, well, maybe if we can figure out when the sun goes down, then we can look at it and say, okay, we only need campus security from this time to that time, and then that time to that time. And people kind of laughed at me and they said, there is no security company that will not do it for a minimum of 4 hours. And I always think, what is the problem in asking? And so the college senate presidents, I'll never forget this, went and figured out when it was going to be dark in Minnesota and from what hour to what hour until the campus closed would we need the security, and could we build campus security around that, and whatever. And we did. We built it around a budget. Now that's such a minor thing, but it's showing about thinking out of the box, where you can think of different strategies to meet your goals and your needs, and not always say it can't happen, it won't happen, they'll never allow it. You always have to ask the question, and then the worst that can happen is no, but at least you've asked the question and you've tried to do your best for the students.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. You have about 5 minutes to give a closing statement.
Okay. In my opening remarks, I said that I would talk to you in my closing remarks about how I would help move this college forward. Okay, first of all, we have to look at the reality of the situation in California. I get it. It's underfunding of education. It's not unique, however, to California. In fact, Minnesota, I dare say, was a forerunner of not such a flattering thing. And we experienced this sooner than you did. In the late 1980s, early 1990s, when I was a young administrator and vice president, tuition kept soaring, and it became problematic. We had to look for resources long before. We were never as luxurious as you were. Community college students didn't have to ever pay anything for their education. They always had to pay a little bit. But when we're looking at these situations, we can ask ourselves a couple of questions. One, we can ask is, how, will we allow that situation to control us or conquer us, or will we conquer it? I can tell you assuredly, as I'm standing here, that if I were selected as your president, I would help you conquer it. Let me tell you a couple of stories that really inspire me and keep me motivated in trying times. One is about Mother Teresa, as I'm sure you all know. She served the dying in the streets of Calcutta. And Mother Teresa also invited other sisters to help her with that. But here was the criteria. She said that if you are going to serve the dying in the streets of Calcutta, you must do it with a joy in your heart and a smile on your face. Now that's a pretty tall order, isn't it? When people are dying. Why did she say that? Because she wanted their lasting memories on earth to be one of love and joy and peace. Okay? Another example, Viktor Frankl, premier psychologist of the 20th century. As you well know, Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp during World War II, and he writes about it in Man's Search for Meaning. He survived that concentration camp because he had a positive vision of his future. And that's what we need to have, is a positive vision of our future. In fact, he tells about when his captors would bring him a bowl of soup. It was dirty, filthy water with a fish head floating at the top. He trained himself to see the beauty in that meal. So what we have to do is make sure that we always see the beauty in the student and the joy of what we are doing, because we will have these other circumstances surrounding us, but we have to focus on what we want. And I'm a good problem solver. When I was hired as vice president to come to this college, it was a dying college. They were looking at keeping it alive, how could it keep going, but it had severe declining enrollment. And because I had a background in that, my charge was is to have record-breaking enrollment. Well, now this occurred at the same time the tuition costs went up. So that's kind of a double challenge, right? Tuition costs are going up, and I have to have record-breaking enrollment. At the same time, we had declining high school population. But what we did is I worked collaboratively with everyone. It's called collective intelligence. And we told their story, and we had record-breaking enrollment year after year after year. And how do I address the tuition problem? I talked about it, providing more scholarship dollars. In fact, we were so successful, the foundation and the college and whoever worked on that we were able to provide more scholarship dollars for incoming students than any of the four-year public institutions. So again, it's how do you attack the problem? You attack the problem with confidence, you attack the problem with courage. I'm here to tell you, and I pledge to you, that if I am your president, that I will be your servant leader. I will empower you to do the best and be the best that you can be so you can best serve students. And I want you to know that each and every one of you is important. Whether you're a member of the community, whether you are a vice president, a dean, a faculty, a staff, a custodial person, each of you makes a difference in the lives of the students by how you treat them. And I do have bookmarks here that I'm very happy to hand out because I had it made for you that says, who I am makes a difference. And know that every day you make a difference. Brent, right before I walked in, he was so kind. He said, Marnie, they're a wonderful crew. Don't get nervous. Don't let them bother you. Did he make a difference in me being up here? Absolutely. Everybody, by what you say and what you do, makes a difference in the lives of students. So please, this bookmark is for you to take. And I don't know where best to put it, but that ends my remarks to you. And thank you again. I would be very honored to serve.
Thank you all for coming, and please fill out this questionnaire so we can give them to the board. Nice.
Still need the book.
Actually, having to rip the pages out.
Ripping my page up. It's my most important notebook. It's got all of Kazanjian's information in there.
Yeah?
All of Hurley's information in there. That's straight journalism. It's
Pretty good. That's a good idea. Here you go, sir.
Thank you.
You good?
Yeah, you can turn it off.